With the purchase of my BMW X6 around 7-8 months ago now, a lot of people have been asking why. I don't know why, but today we're going to go through why I remapped it, what it really means to remap a car, and how much MPG, more excitement. Now, basing this car around a performance review is pretty much a waste of time. It's like a block of flats. So today I wanted to get into exactly why I remapped this and what it meant coming the other side, a stage 1 remap meant to this car. Obviously this is a absolutely massive truck thing, not really sure what it is, but what performance gains did I get from it, what MPG gains did I get from it, and is it better to live with on a day-to-day basis with the remap? A lot of people have asked me since getting the car remapped what it's actually like. So today I wanted to devote one video to pretty much explaining why a remap is a good idea, why I did it to this car, and also go B-road bashing it because I haven't really done that yet. Although this is my daily driver, it can still get up and go. It is a little bit of a joke, you know, it is a massive, I mean, look at the size of it, it's just stupid. But we can still have a lot of fun in this thing. But let's get in the car, let's get on some roads. Try not to meet anything on a single track as well, because width and stuff don't really matter. Okay, excuse the rather large coat in this one. It is -2 outside right now. So the whole B-road bashing thing is going to happen today, don't get me wrong. I'm just going to wait until it, you know, gets a little bit warmer. Remapping. A lot of people remap their cars, and it's something that I wanted to touch on because a lot of people will contact me and asking exactly what I got from my remap. I think it's a generic thing, you know, you buy a new car and you know how good it is stock, but you know full well there is untapped potential in these cars. Yes, this one being a very strange untapped thing that you want to actually remap, but it works. The engine is used in other BMW platforms, so there's no reason why you couldn't in this car. Now, this isn't a how to remap your X6 video because no one out there owns an X6, and I completely understand why. But what does it mean to remap your car? Well, from the bases, you can get basic maps, literally plug and play. You can buy them off eBay, throw them into basically any newer age platform car, and you will gain a certain percentage of brake horsepower and torque figure. You can go from that, which is a, you know, relatively generic map that you can get, all the way up to custom maps depending on what turbo you've got, what intercooler you've got, all that sort of good stuff. So with this car, the guys at Voodoo put a completely custom map on it. You were getting all the desired effects of a generic stage map, but completely customizing the whole remap depending on where we wanted the boost to come in, where we wanted the torque to come in. This meant that we could get so much more potential out of the car. You guys know, if you'd seen the remapping dyno video, how much power we actually got out of it. It was a huge amount. It was a completely different car to drive. I think with most platform cars you will get most of your power gains from that initial remap. So in this you saw a huge uptake in the torque figure, especially because this is a diesel, you can get a lot more torque out of it. That meant that it completely transformed the way this car drove, especially when it came on boost. So say I'm selecting manual mode, it says manual sport, so we'll put it in that. Apparently there's no sport mode in this car, none whatsoever. So third gear, 2,000 RPM, 2.5, and we have our full torque, our full power at the end of the day, around 2.5 to 3,000 RPM. This car only revs round to 5,000 RPM. Your diesels, they're going to be lower in the torque range, especially. Your torque range is around 2.5 to, I'd say, 4,500 RPM, but she redlines at 5 anyway. This meant, although your rev range is relatively small, the torque range is even smaller, so you can actually bang this through the gears relatively quickly. And although you will wait for boost on a diesel, that's just how these are, when it does kick in, it is plant you in your seat fast, this car. And I know it sounds insane for me to say that, but you do not expect some huge spaceship block of flats weird thing to actually perform in this level. If you keep this in the right gear in manual mode, it actually is a right laugh to drive. I found, especially after owning this car for quite a while now, the shortened roof and the more bulkier exterior meant that it was actually a fantastic width platform for chucking this round corners. Yes, it will not outperform your hot hatches, do not get me wrong, but you'll be surprised at how much weight this is actually carrying lower down than you would expect in maybe another 4x4 of the same sort of variant, like an X5. I drove an X5 before I bought this. I felt that it was incredibly top heavy for what it was. I jumped in one of these and I felt, just from a test drive, that the top heaviness was a little bit lower in the car. It meant the handling was a bit better in my opinion, and I know this car isn't about handling. I haven't built it to handle or perform whatsoever, but just because the roof was a little bit lower and your footprint on the road was a lot wider. You only found that out when I remapped it, because I didn't used to chuck it around as much as I wanted to. I literally used this as a daily driver until that remap. The remap made me so much more confident in the car because it wasn't delayed, it wasn't down on power as you guys would have seen from the remap video. It was incredibly down on power, but it meant that I could drop a gear and it actually had some get up and go, and it meant you had a bit more faith in the car as well, which was quite nice. So not only did it make it faster, it made me feel like there was more confidence in the chassis of the car, because the power was there to really turn you into a corner and you could plant your foot and you were out the other side. In the stock form, it didn't do that. It didn't do that whatsoever. So it felt more confident. The car itself felt more confident. I've spoke to other people that have, you know, remapped their Golfs, remapped their Scirocco's, S3s, anything like that, and they felt that the car is incredibly more confident just with a little bit more power gain from a remap. I know this is hard for some people to relay and, oh, why would you do that to that car? It makes no sense. But until you've sort of lived through it and done it yourself, you won't really know the feeling you'll get from just simply remapping a car. Another thing I want to touch on about is the MPG figure. Now, this was getting embarrassingly 21, 22 MPG around town, and I did actually buy a diesel to be a bit more fuel efficient in the long run. Yes, on a run, it will do 30s quite easily when it was stock. With the remap, although you're producing a lot more power, it's so much more efficient on fuel. So around town, I'm getting, you know, higher 20s, 28, so that's a huge gain, you know, 7 to 8 MPG just in that single remap. And on a run, you're getting mid 30s to high 40s, which again is a huge leap, because all you've done is told the car to go faster. So the remap not only made the car a lot more enjoyable to drive, and you could chuck it around because you felt like you had the power to come out the other side, it was just a lot more fun. It meant that your petrol bill went down at the same time, which was insane. I'd never really remapped a car and got that sort of performance gain and that MPG gain at the same time. Now, don't get me wrong, every car is different. You'll remap a ST150 Mark 6 Fiesta and get not a lot of brake horsepower gain, but then you'll remap your Audi RS7 and get, you know, 150 brake horsepower more. It's just down to different variants. A lot of car companies, I've noticed especially, claim these brake horsepower figures, and then one stage one map can bring it up 100 brake horsepower, which is insanity, but it means they've been dumbed down from the factory. And I think this is another prime example. It came out with, you know, just over 200 brake horsepower, which is just not enough, and then to come out the other side with incredible power gains just from telling the car to go faster, telling it to have more fuel and more boost at a certain RPM, it really showed how, in fact, dumbed down this car was when it left the factory. But don't get me wrong, this was actually a laugh that me and the AET guys were saying, you know, let's remap it for a laugh and see what happens. And it's transformed the car. I can't believe this car performs the way it does, gets the good MPG that I wanted from a car. Yes, other people are 50 MPG, blah, blah, but this is a big bus, let's be honest. It's never going to get 50 MPG. It's just the reaction I felt from the drive back and the excitement I got just enjoying it around my roads, knowing full well how it reacted beforehand. The power gain and your butt dyno especially, not necessarily the figures that were produced to you that day, but your butt dyno, knowing full well that this is actually physically chucking you in the seat a lot more, meant that it was so much more enjoyable. I'm stuck. I think what I'm trying to say basically is, regardless of what car you got, go and remap it. Go and see what potential is really there from these engines, from these cars. I think this video really applies to people that have never had their car mapped and maybe thinking about mapping it. If you're thinking about mapping it, go and do your research. See who's best at remapping your certain car. I know Voodoo AET Motorsport was so good at the BMW stuff that I had to go with them. They did a proper job with the mapping. They did a custom map to this car with a hard cut limiter, and then completely changed the graph. When we were on the dyno to, you know, get the little areas here and there where the boost maybe was coming down, we brought it up a bit. This car, this custom map that's been put on is so specific to this car. Because this was custom made for this car on the day, it made it so much more responsive. Just like this is not a performance car whatsoever. It's quite frankly the opposite of performance. It's big, it's bulky, it's got a lazy engine. It's not what you would call performance whatsoever, but just through that small remap that we did, it's completely transformed this car. I think from NA stuff, you know, non-turbocharged, you won't see that much, don't get me wrong. I think your ST170s, your Type Rs, all that sort of stuff, they don't get a lot of power gain from a map. Your turbocharged, especially your diesel stuff, like this, huge gains. And if you are going to do it, I would say everybody that's never had a remap before, you know, this is really the first car I've ever properly remapped. I would go to somewhere that's specialised in these cars, these engines, you know, mapping software. Get it dynoed on the day. Don't just put a map on it and expect more power. You want to know the true figures. I know figures in the real world are sometimes not the reality, but you want to know that the money that you've spent has been spent properly and you can see the power figures in front of you. With that being said, there's a lot of people that would just go and generically map their car, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just for me, I'd want custom mapping put on my car to properly get the most potential out of the car I'm driving and the engine that's in it. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, another random video about some stupid monstrosity in the background. I do love this car though. I think it's absolutely hilarious, and no one else is buying one on YouTube, so why not? But it does open the gate to other things. What power could I actually get out of this? Yes, this isn't the big engine. It isn't the 3.5 engine. This is just the 3-litre single turbo, so who knows? Maybe there's some more performance to come of this. I would like to put an intercooler and another map and a DPF delete and all that sort of stuff, and if that does come, I'd love to see the power gain I get from that. Yes, it won't be as dramatic as the first power gain I really got from this car, really opening it up from the factory settings, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.